Hello World Civ students, just wanted to give you a little bit of more information, a little bit of help on the quiz for the impact of globalization. A couple notes before I go through some of the content. One, for all the quizzes that we've done on Canvas, I have decided to allow you to take them multiple times. So if there are ones that you've taken before that you want to get a better grade on because you didn't put enough time in, not satisfied with your grade, you can now go back to any of those and retake them. So I would look at them first, study, and then redo that. So if you're someone who's concerned about where your grade is right now, and it's not because of missing assignments, that's the first thing to do is missing assignments. But if it's just because of bad grades on the quizzes, go back and redo those and you should be able to help yourself out a little bit there. So globalization, the increasing economic independence of the world's nations. So there's a lot of things that have caused that over the years. I'm going to go over some of the stuff that you should expect to see on this quiz if you haven't taken it already. One effect of globalization is that multiple countries could have a role in making the same thing. So one example of this would be that the iPhone. So the raw materials for a lot of electronics that we use come from Africa, where they're mined, and then they are made in China, the actual iPhones, but of course the design was created here in the United States. So that's just 3 different continents right there in just one product. It gets more complicated than that, but you get the idea. So one effect is having a single product made in different countries throughout the world. So there's a thing called the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. These were started after World War II as a way to kind of rebuild the world's economies, especially those who had been kind of pounded by World War II. They've continued through this day. And what they do now, though, is to help developing countries modernize their economies. Well, a couple of the ways they do that is by giving loans, but there are often strings attached to those loans. So you get this money, but you have to do certain things with it, or you have to meet certain criteria to get it. They also lend expertise. So economic advisors will go to developing countries and help them set up structures to help them take advantage of the new global society. One of the things that those 2 organizations and globalization in general utilizing is free trade. So what that free trade usually means that goods, information, and money, or otherwise known as capital, can flow easily across the globe from one country to another. It's very easy to move those things, whether that's the actual physical things or just information or money. The one thing that cannot move, and this affects a lot of people, is labor. People, it's hard to move. That's why you see countries moving to the labor, where it's cheap. So factories going to Mexico or to China or India. Free trade means the movement of goods, information, and capital, but not labor. A term that you'll see is deregulation. So that means they're taking regulations that were there and getting rid of them. The idea is to make it easier for companies that they don't have so many rules to follow to get started. And that does do that. It does make it easier for new companies to access the market. There are other things that go along with deregulation that we'll talk about as well, though. One problem that people have with free trade and what's going on is that it affects local cultures, and a lot of people fear that we're going to lose a lot of local cultures and all become one big culture eventually. Supporters of globalization say that that's not the case, that it helps these small cultures by exposing other people to them. So they're able to expand and influence other people. That's what supporters of globalization say. Another thing that impacts a lot of globalization, free trade, what's going on, is labor laws. So the United States has very strict regulations on how you can work, where you can work, how much you can get paid, safety, environmental regulations, things like that. If those are not enforced, however, which a lot of countries, developing countries, want to bring the companies there, so they want to make it easy, so they deregulate. They do have some labor laws on the books, but what happens is they don't enforce those. So that's good for the companies who move there. Those companies can make more money, but it's not good for the people and the citizens, and especially the workers, because if the labor laws aren't enforced, they can basically have sweatshops. Another way that global companies are trying to take advantage of this free trade and things in different countries and being able to incorporate in different countries is they move their operations around to different countries to avoid as many laws as possible so that they're not stuck with one country's laws. Again, the United States has some of the most strict laws on companies. So a lot of companies will say their headquarters are in Ireland or in the Caribbean somewhere or in another country where they're not subject to those laws. So they will even split up and they'll have part of their company in one country, part of their company in another country so that they can best take advantage and basically avoid the most strict laws. Another thing that's changed globalization is transportation. It's gotten much faster and much cheaper, and that's because of shipping containers and just different technology that has increased, airplanes being able to ship things. So that's made it a lot easier to move goods. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, easier to move goods around the world because of faster and cheaper transportation. Finally, another thing to consider with the impact of globalization is income inequality. The income inequality, meaning the amount of money that the richest people have versus the amount of money that the poorest people have, is getting wider. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and there are fewer people in the middle. This is true around the world. The question that you'll see has some of the answers have to do with countries, but the correct answer, the thing to think about here, is with the people. The people, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and so that gap is getting wider. That's all for this quiz, the impact of globalization. If you've already taken it and you're watching this and you want to go back and retake it, as I mentioned, you can. If you haven't, make sure you read the text. I did not go through every question that you're going to see, but make sure and read the text. Hopefully this helped put it all together and you can do well. And then we'll have another one of these next week, and we're getting real close to the end of the year. All right, see ya.